I 3D printed a Thunderhawk, so you don't have to. Let's get into it. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the fact that I spent the last couple weeks 3D printing a Thunderhawk and what I learned from it. And really the final question is, should you do it? Or should you spend the $950 it is for a Thunderhawk when it's available? Let's go make a mess. So Too Long Didn't Watch. It was a great project. If you have the capability and the means to do so, you might save a good chunk of money doing it yourself, or just buy a Thunderhawk from the GW website when it's available. But I'm going to talk about some of the lessons that I learned and some things that I plan on doing better or doing different if I do print another one. So I want to talk about why this came about, and the reason why I decided to do this project was first at Adepticon. There was this beautiful Death Guard board that you could play on that had a bunch of tank traps. I'm going to put pictures in the background, but it had a destroyed like Spartan, some rhinos, some drop pods. I think I'd have to look at the pictures again. And then this destroyed, crashed Thunderhawk in the corner. And it was painted so well, and it was so exciting to see, because obviously Death Guard player, and I really wanted to do that, or at least have one. So I wanted a Thunderhawk that I could play with, but also like a crash one would be really cool. So I went online, or after weeks of conversing with my friends, and I was like, oh, there's a file online. Should I do it? I don't know. It's a big project. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to buy the file, and then I'm going to work really hard to 3D print a Thunderhawk. And if it doesn't work, at least I have it to use for terrain, and I'm completely okay with that. So as I started to get hype for this project and telling all my friends about it, they're pretty excited, and they're like, if it works out, they would definitely want one. And as I started to prep it, I took all the pieces into a Leche slicer and did all the supports myself, because it doesn't come pre-supported, and did all this stuff. And I started the endeavor of printing out this Thunderhawk. Now I currently use a Anycubic Mono 7 Pro, so it's a relatively large build plate, which is great because the biggest piece took up a good chunk of the build plate, and you definitely need a large build plate if you plan on doing this kind of print. So something small like an Anycubic Photon is probably not big enough unless you slice those pieces apart, which you can very well do in any slicing program. And literally cut them in half. I actually might recommend it because some of the larger pieces that the chassis, if you can slice it in half, you actually can avoid some of the warping that occurred that I ran into when I printed it the first time. Now I think I might go back and fix some of that. Otherwise, if I do another one, I'm just gonna let it warp a little bit of what it did anyway. So it is what it is. But yeah, definitely recommend slicing it if you have a smaller printer, because you won't be able to fit it. But also, to avoid warping, you can definitely cut it in half, and especially the largest piece. If you can, slice it. If not, it's gonna take you like a week, if not two, to completely print all of the things for this file, or any large file like this that you plan on printing. So at this point, I want to take a moment and actually go back and explain some of the things that I learned up until this point. So first things first is, if you see a file online that you're looking for, or something similar for a product that you might want to purchase at some point or print at some point, I highly recommend that you purchase it, especially if it gets very close to infringing on an IP. If you have the monetary means to do so, pick up that file just so you have it in your hard drive, in your repository, because a lot of the times these files disappear, and then if you know who the creator is, you can reach out to them and ask for it. But if you don't, you are stuck without that file. And obviously you have to purchase the product itself, which isn't a bad thing, but if you plan on doing a 3D project like this, purchase those files if possible. And that will guarantee that you have that file regardless if it gets taken down for IP infringement or not. All that being said, is the big box company is expensive, and there are a lot of amazing third-party sculptors and 3D sculptors that make amazing products online that you can get, that they have made for this hobby. And although it comes very close to IPs and all of that, if you find a file that you like, go support those sculptors, because it allows them to do more of this kind of stuff and make amazing products that we can use and print at home. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't support the big box company, because you should. That's the whole point of this. They created this game for us that we love and play. But it can be expensive. And if you have the ability to do some of these things at home and be a little bit more customizing with your minis, then I don't see why you wouldn't want to do that. And that is something that is kind of lacking with the capability of what they provide, is that they have all these amazing third-party sculptors or 3D designers that make all these products to help support their game. And unfortunately, they take the stuff down, but if it's still up there and you have the ability to get it, pick it up, because then you can make your army or your minis a little bit more customized. Another point I want to make at this point in the video is I touched on slicing the large objects in half. That is an option. That's not the only option though. So another option is to hollow them out. Now, I personally don't like hollowed 3D prints because I never seem to clean them properly internally. So if you don't clean them well and cure them well enough, they will start to ooze over time. They will break down and it just doesn't work out. It hasn't worked out in my favor. So I choose not to hollow my prints. That's why I chose a full resin body. But when doing large projects like these, as you can see in this video, I did run out of resin while printing one of the chassis pieces, and it was enough complete to where I could just fill it in with some gap filler, and I have that in this video. But while you're printing these large projects, make sure that you are cognizant of how much resin is in your vat. Make sure it's full at the beginning. Make sure you check on it to make sure it hasn't failed. And especially if it's super large, make sure you just have enough resin in, and go add more resin if your 3D printer does not automatically add resin into it. And that is something you have to set up in some 3D printers, or have the capability to do in some 3D printers. So make sure you supply it with enough resin to complete your project. Another option is to 3D print the chassis in PLA, which is the plastic filament. So you'd have to have a different 3D printer to do so. Make sure that's dialed in as well, and then 3D print the chassis, and then 3D print everything else in resin, put it all together, and you have this lightweight, amazingly lightweight resin print. Now, the Thunderhawk in this video is all resin, which means it weighs a ton. And I say that we actually weighed it, it's 8.6 pounds, but to me, when you pick it up, it's more like 12. So when it comes to building the base, I have to plan accordingly. Whereas if that chassis was either hollow or PLA, it would cut down that weight significantly. So we will see what the future brings in regards to that. So those are some of the few points that I want to emphasize that I learned in this process. And the next part about the body and the chassis and the wings and all the other accoutrement of this plane is pin everything together as much as you can. Now, I did use a lot of super glue and I only pinned so much. I wish I pinned more. Now, nothing has broken yet, but if I drop that or at all, if it takes a heavy bump, it is 100% gonna shatter in some spots just because of the super glue. So make sure that if you can pin it, add pins to it. I should have added more pins throughout the wings to make sure everything stayed on properly. But that'll be something I do in the future. So at this point in the video, I want to start talking about my painting process. Now, I did end up choosing to go Death Guard colors because it was black initially, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it non-descriptive and alternate the doors between Blood Angels and Death Guard, or if I wanted to do just Blood Angels or pick Death Guard. And obviously I went with Death Guard. So I immediately aerosol sprayed it with Wraithbone, and then I started taping off. Once that was dry, I started taping off with painter's tape. If you have the smaller thin tape, great, but I didn't have it. The painter's tape worked really well because it was larger, and because of being a larger model, I had that extra, buffer to avoid getting paint on pieces that I didn't want. So I used painter's tape, cut it up where I needed to with an X-Acto knife, and placed it all around the model so I could start painting the green. Now, I did choose the dark camo green. I just did the primer, but you can also use for the regular paint from Pro Acryl, same colors, but I did with the primer because it was, a little thicker, maybe? I don't know. I have more of it, so I went with that. And just started painting the greens in the spots where the greens are. And that is actually the same paint scheme that the Legion Imperialis Thunderhawk has, because that's based off of Death Guard. So I just went with that same scheme. The tail fin's green, the wings are green, and the front of the plane is also green. So there's a picture online, you can look it up, but it looks pretty cool. I think it looks great, so that's the theme that I went with. And to avoid some overspray first on the mat that my Thunderhawk was sitting on, but also to avoid overspray on other pieces that wasn't covered by the paint, I used just a regular piece of paper to make a wall. So wherever, and you can see me doing it in the video, wherever it kind of needed some cover so it didn't spray in front of me because of the weird angles, I just use that piece of paper as a buffer. Now I did go with, since this Thunderhawk is 3D printed and it doesn't have a hollowed out area for the cockpit, I just went with how the aeronautical one is painted, where it's just the blue on the glass. And it gives it a good look. I did do a dark blue later on, but I also fixed that later so it looks a little bit more clear and a little bit better. But this, again, obviously easy beginning stages, and we move on from there to make everything better. So the next piece is just painting black, where all the things are going to be metal. So anything that I thought I was going to dry brush metal, I just went with a black primer. And I'm using primers here just to avoid using black paint. And I have so much more primer than I do the paint pots or the paint droppers. So it's like easier to use the primer, and I can always go buy a giant bottle because I always use it. So I did the thrusters in black and the cannon in black, and then some parts of the wing that are just going to be parts of metal. So the next thing I did was take Vallejo metal color aluminum and just dry brushed it everywhere over the black. And to me, the bright silver dry brush over black is like the best looking metal, silver metal that you can do. It's super simple, super quick, super easy. Highly recommend it. It takes no effort at all to dry brush on everything, and I do it for a lot of projects. So if you want cheap, easy metal, go that route for sure. And then I started doing the dry brush for the green. Now I have it's like a yellow green from Pro Acryl. I just dry brushed that as my green, and I did that a couple times. I actually added probably a little bit of yellow throughout the process just to brighten up the corners just a little bit. And here in the video, actually you get to see me shake that pot and spill it everywhere, even on top of my newly painted Thunderhawk. So I had to wipe it all up with a rag, and yeah, it leaves a green splotch on the cream color, on the tan color. But oh well, it's what we have to live with. So we manage. The next thing that I did was mix up a dark, like a black brown wash to put over all of the metals. So it's more like Agrex Earthshade mixed with known oil. It's kind of all blended together. It's just an oil wash, super simple to make, and just put it all over the metal. And I added a little bit of burnt umber to that same mixture and started doing the red kind of dingy color. And this I'm putting all over the cream and the green. And let me tell you, when I put all this on, I was scared because I was afraid it wasn't going to wipe off exactly how I wanted it to, and that it wasn't going to look good. And you know, once it's all said and done, it looks amazing. I'm really happy that I did it. But putting all of this, dirtying up this Thunderhawk as I just got done painting all of these colors on it, really hurt my soul. But it did actually turn out very well. So oil washes are amazing. They get in all the cracks and crevices. I just made a giant one that was really liquidy and just painted it everywhere with a really big brush, just trying to get it everywhere. Now I took once this is all done, I took some of the triangular makeup sponges, and just started wiping away all of the open panels and tried to leave all the cracks and crevices as I needed to. And I think I went through like 15 sponges here. It's a lot to go through all of this. I left the green more red than the cream, obviously, but I just did that all over and just started wiping it away. And by the end of it, my fingers looked terrible because I was just wiping all of that oil wash away with those sponges. Now, you know, we make a mess here in the painter's mess. That's kind of the point. So we did it. We succeeded in this project, and it actually turned out really well. All of that oil wash stayed in the crevices, and all of the panels got wiped away, and they just kind of have this like dirty, dingy look on them. And adding, I took later on, I don't have it in this video, I didn't actually record it, but I took a little bit of sponge, dipped it in some Rhinox hide, and just started dabbing it all over the plane, all over the panels, to give that weathered effect, as if that paint had been chipped off, that chipping effect. And between that, the oil wash, and everything else, it turned out amazing. And then all that was really left were the decals that I put on, and the painting some of the other things like the lights and the missiles. And yeah, it was kind of hard to lift and paint at the same time. I did take out the airbrush to finish it up, but that was about it. So before we get into the final results, I want to leave you guys with one more piece of advice in regards to painting something large like this. Or terrain is also a good example. And I actually brought this up in my terrain video, and I want to bring it up again now because it is important. And I also fell into this trap, you could say, while I was painting this Thunderhawk. And that is that there is a point where it is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Something large like this is going to have a lot of details. Now, this particular print actually has a lot of things that I did not include, like windshield wipers and a bunch of carabiners everywhere and like eye hooks and all of these things that I didn't actually end up putting on the model. And to me, it's not that it shouldn't have it, because it should, but really, what is the point other than to really make this model, you know, unique and all of that? And that's, if that's your choice and that's who you are, by all means do those things. But for me, when it comes to painting terrain or painting something like this, especially at the point that I got to, I wanted to just be complete and be done with it. Not that I didn't enjoy the process, because I actually loved this process, but the small accoutrement to me is like, I don't need greebles everywhere. Like, that doesn't do it for me. So, but it does do it for some people. So at some point there is good enough, especially if you jump between projects like I do. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for sticking with it and seeing me go through this project, because it was a lot of fun to do, and it took like 3 weeks to do, between the printing, the assembly, and then the painting itself. The painting itself I actually did in 2 days, which I was pretty impressed with, but I definitely focused heavily on finishing it because I wanted to do it for my friends and then bring it to the game store that week. So I definitely knocked it out as fast as I could, but it does take a lot. There's a lot of effort that goes into these kind of projects. So let me know what you guys think of the project and the plane and how it turned out. And hopefully this video can help you decide if you want to try a large project like this. Now, I am really happy that I have this file. I can make another one, or I could make another one and break it or cut it in half in the slicing software. You can cut it at an angle so that it could sit at an angle in the dirt like it crashed. That's kind of another thought I plan on doing. So if you want to see another video like this with another Thunderhawk, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd be really excited to do another one, but I want it to be something worthwhile. So if you like this kind of content and you want to see something else, let me know down below. As always, like, subscribe, and then any comments. I do appreciate all of that. So if you made it this far, thank you again. You guys are awesome. And until the next video, go make a mess. Bye.